Hello there, it's 8 p.m. in Banjul. This is Newsfile. We are broadcasting for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. In the headlines tonight, the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Kinte Sanyang, presides over the official launch of the 2022 State of the World Population Report on behalf of the Vice President. Local Government, Lands and Religious Affairs Minister Sheriff Abbas Sanyang embarks on a nationwide familiarization tour. Officials of the multi-million-dollar Giraffe project say the initiative will transform the agriculture value chain into a more productive sector.
Also coming up, a devastating fire outbreak has ravaged an entire shop in Dibakunda, leaving the owners in a desperate situation. Away from home, the Tunisian Health Ministry says it has suspended the use of Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccines following a recent warning by the World Health Organization. Elsewhere, the price of food and non-alcoholic beverages in South Africa rose by 6% in April compared to a year earlier.
Well, these and other stories coming ahead in today's edition of Newsfile. With me, Fatou Elika Mulushi and
Aissatou Keita.
Do stay with us. You're watching GRTS Newsfile. Now, we begin this edition of the Newsfile with the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Kinte Sanyang, who on Friday officially launched the 2022 State of the World Population Report on behalf of the Vice President. The event attended by senior government and United Nations officials, as well as other development partners, was held on the theme, Seeing the Unseen, the Case for Action in the Neglected Crisis of Unintended Pregnancy. Baba Silla has the details.
Number of unintended pregnancies alarming levels during the global pandemic, and number keeps rising every year amid increasing call for action to address the issue. Over 2 million unintended pregnancies occur every year, and most cases leave women and sometimes teenage girls in serious consequences in the face of abuse and stigma. Mohamed Njai, the Executive Director of Gambia Family Planning Association, gave detailed outline on the state of unintended pregnancies and appealed for action to resolve the situation.
Looking at the recently completed DHS, the Demographic Health Survey, results have shown that unintended pregnancies have reached almost 18%, which is very terrifying and very worrying, part of which 70 to 80% affected young people. Thus, we can safely say majority of the victims of unintended pregnancies are coming from the young people. So as a result, to end this, we need to invest more in young people where they will be provided with adequate information and services on adolescent sexual reproductive health.
Each year, half of all of pregnancies, totaling 121 million globally, are unintended. This focus is of particular significance to the central pillar of UNFPA, which is a world where every pregnancy is wanted and every young person with potential is fulfilled.
New UNFPA country representative Ndero started delivering a powerful message appealing for global action to solve the rising menace.
Unintended pregnancies are preventable if we empower women and girls to make affirmative decisions about their reproductive health choices and motherhood from childbearing age all the way to menopause. For this to happen, we must convince men and boys of all ages, traditional and religious leaders, the media, teachers, to name a few, the opportunity cost missed when we don't address the issue of unintended pregnancy. We must change our gender norms, gender and social norms, so that pregnancy is by choice and not by chance.
The Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare officially launched the report on behalf of the Vice President, emphasizing government's commitment to empowerment of women.
The theme for this year's report is timely and apt, especially amidst the global COVID-19 pandemic that has tested the healthcare system of all countries, leading to disruption of the provision of sexual and reproductive health services. In 2015, world leaders ratified the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, which is a scale-up of the Millennium Development Goals. Over the years, governments have invested and focused on a lot of contraception, the promotion of sexual and reproductive health, and setting up of legal frameworks for the protection and empowerment of women of reproductive age and children.
Certificates were awarded to these young photographers using photography as a tool to report on gender-based violence and pressing issues affecting women's well-being. Bawasila, GRTS.
The Minister of Local Government, Lands and Religious Affairs, Sheriff Abbas Sanyang, has embarked on a nationwide familiarization tour. Minister Sanyang and delegation had their first stop in the town of Esau in the Lower Nyomi district. Farmer Akanya reports that the minister and the team had fruitful engagements with stakeholders in the area.
Honorable Sheriff Abbas Sanyang, Minister of Local Government, Lands and Religious Affairs, accompanied by heads of directorates under his ministry. The high-powered delegation, including the regional governor of the North Bank and his technical advisory committee, were received by the chief of Lower Nyomi district, marking day one of a nationwide familiarization tour. The tour is a significant move by the ministry to unleash power to the right holders, ensure their full participation in the decision-making process, as well as replacing their concerns with solutions. The tour is a significant move by the ministry to unleash power to the right holders, ensure their full participation in the decision-making process, as well as replacing their concerns with solutions. The delegation conducted its first town hall meeting in the settlement of Esau. The interface on one hand allowed locals to raise their doubts and or concerns on issues such as land tenure systems, selection of village heads, and environmental protection, whilst on the other hand, it also served as a good avenue for officials of the ministry to shed light on issues raised during the meeting. In an interview, Honorable Sanyang shared his strategic development plan with GRTS.
We are now making people aware of the mechanisms of selecting an alikalo in a community. It cannot be every Tom, Dick and Harry. It cannot be because you are wealthy, it's just because you are popular or whatever. It's because you are the indigenous settlers of the place. You are the founding fathers of the community. Unless those clans or those relatives are empty, nobody is having the right to claim. And unless they are incapacitated in one way or the other, then we could look forward to something and somebody else. But that's not a burning issue. Land in this country is the burning issue. It's a scarce resource of nature, and we are abusing it as a country. And we are abusing it as a people. We are abusing it as villagers, alkalis and villagers as stuff. So it's becoming more of a problem in this country. And this is where we are trying to derive methods and means to alleviate the fear of people in acquiring land, maintaining their land for their own homes. Everybody needs shelter. Be you a Gambian, are away or you are living, everybody needs land. Be you young or old, you need a home for your people or your family. So these are the categories in which we need to look at as a people and to make sure we maximize the availability of this scarce resource.
The issue of religious tolerance formed center stage during the meetings. The lands minister said his administration will work towards ensuring a highly religious tolerant Gambia.
Gambia is known for one thing, it has a religious tolerance. And the fate of this country have definitely helped us to believe that we need to do our utmost best to maintain peace and tranquility of every citizen of this country. And government have been embedded to make sure that they look after this, to make sure every citizen lives peacefully in your own country. We need to work together. Everybody needs to work together. We need to throw away all forms of sentiments, all sorts of feeling that is going to deprive our interactions, that is going to limit our interactions, and work together as one people, one family, to make sure this country will succeed in whatever we are looking for.
A similar meeting was held in the Upper Nyumi district settlement of Turunku. The tour, however, continues with town hall meetings in Jokadu as well as the lower and central Badibu district. For the news, I am Farmer. Honorable
Matching grant manager of the Giraffe project says it is earmarked for the transformation of the agriculture value chain from subsistence to commercial standards. Lamin Trawale made the remark during an interview with GRTS after a day-long awareness creation program with technical advisory committee members in the Lower River region. The Gambia government, with support from the World Bank, is funding the multi-million-dollar project. Here's an excerpt.
Component 3.2, which is co-financing productive private investment along the value chain. So this co-financing, it's in the form of a matching grant scheme, and in this we have a total amount of $9 million to be given to our prospective beneficiaries. And by these prospective beneficiaries now, we're looking at individual smallholder agricultural farmers, groups, and then small and medium enterprises. Going into the matching grant scheme proper, this is under component 3.2 of the Giraffe project, co-financing productive private investment along the value chain. So under this matching grant scheme, we have two windows. Window one, we're looking at individuals in the agricultural value chain, and then that is the 5 agricultural value chain that the Giraffe project is actually supporting, and they are rice, horticulture. In culture, you have mango as well. You have maize, cashew, and then poultry. So under window one now, we are targeting 500 individuals across the 7 agricultural regions in the country. And these individuals, the matching grant scheme can support them up to 500,000 Gambian dollars, which will represent 80% of their total investment. And then we will also want these individuals to contribute at least 20% as they are co-funding. So in essence, the matching grant scheme, to demystify it further, it's just a co-funding venture wherein the Giraffe project is contributing 80% and then individuals 20%.
Meanwhile, a devastating fire outbreak has ravaged an entire shop in Dipakunda. The incident, which occurred on Thursday around midnight, has consumed everything in the shop belonging to Pategay and Adam Asise. According to eyewitnesses, the inferno was caused by an electric power failure. Mohammed Kabir Mbub visited the scene and he now reports.
Inferno destroyed the entire tailoring shop belonging to Pategay and Adam Asise, leaving them in a desperate situation. According to eyewitnesses, the fire was caused by erratic power failure, resulting to damages worth over $200,000 to the family. One Pategay, a co-partner to Adam Asise, in an emotional mood appealed for support from the government, NGOs, individuals, and other Samaritans to come to their aid in order for them to start their business again.
Liggéey nañ ba wàcc daal ba tëj suñu place ba dem tëddi kër ga am jëmu ju ñëw fëgg suñu nekk xamal ñu ni sa place mi ngi génnee safara.
We lost our properties and that of our customers.
suñuy bagages yi customer jëmmi place bi nga xam ne dañu ko luyee woon sax.
The only sad thing about it, some of our customers understand, whilst others did not.
am na ci ñoo xam ni seeni bagages yàqu na bàyyi nañ te yàlla rek tax. am na ñoo xam ni nag wax dëgg yàlla mënuñoo bàyyee noonu faaw ñu góorgóorlu jëm leen a fay rek soobu yàlla.
The victims also appeal to their customers who lost their clothes, to the inferno to understand them and exercise patience in this unforeseeable circumstance.
Pate suma partner la ñëw yu may ñëw dem di jaay yëpp si moom lay jógee daanaka.
Pate is my partner. The clothes that I used to sell is from Pate. And me too, I am a tailor. Since We started our business. This incident has never happened here. It's very hard with us.
fii daal koñ bi ñëpp jàmm ak salaam lañu seq client yi tamit jàmm ak salaam lañu seq.
Some of the eyewitnesses, including Bella Ba and Abdullah Ba, both described the fire incident as devastating as it has consumed everything in the tailoring shop.
ma ñu ne ma place paate bi mu ngi lakka ma gis ne su ma tëddee sax du ma mun a nelaw.
léegi si guddi fekk man ak benn xale ñu ngi toogu ma gis safara bi rek ma yónni xale bi ma ne ko dema oo borom bi atelier bi.
The business partners, however, thanked the neighbors for their efforts in putting out the fire as they continue to solicit more support to start their business again. Reporting for the news, I am Mohammed Kabir Mboob.
Sure, there's Kabir there on that unfortunate incident. Yeah. But elsewhere, the Nematulai Women Federation in the Upper River region has handed over a piece of land to Roots Project officials for the construction of cold storage facility for women gardeners. The facility is meant to address post-harvest challenges faced by women gardeners in the area. Sedu Kamara covered the handing over ceremony and filed in this report.
Vast area of land has been handed over to Roots Project for onwards construction, meant for cold storage facility for the women gardeners. The land was provided by the Nematulai Women Federation. According to the Federation President Maria Masilla, the provision of storage facility will help address their post-harvest challenges as vegetables get spoiled even before get to the market. She, however, assured that the Federation will take ownership of the facility in terms of maintenance for sustainability purposes. The Regional Agriculture Director Karamo Minte and Aliu So of Nakofak, respectively, underscored the importance of the storage facility in the area. Minte and So said cold storage facility has always been a facility that women gardeners are yearning for. The governor of the region, Sambaba, described the project as timely, adding that the storage facility will go a long way to address the challenge women gardeners are facing in preserving their garden produce to avoid post-harvest loss.
Most of the women in Upper River region are engaged in horticultural activities, and based on that, most of their produce in the gardens normally perished, or sometimes what they do is they normally sell it at a cheap price. So that this is affecting them. So therefore, having the Roots Project, that you know that at least is a developmental oriented project that is geared towards improving the lives and livelihood of women and youth, decided to make sure that at least they establish 3 cold storage facilities as a pilot, and Upper River region happens to be one of the pilot. And today in Kerewan Badala, we are here witnessing the handing over of the land to the contractors for them to continue at least, or for them to start work.
The National Roots Project Coordinator, Mahmoud Aliu Jai, urged the Nematulai Women Federation to take ownership of the project.
The importance of this cold storage facility. It is meant to minimize the post-harvest losses for the women gardeners, but also to put them in a strong position to bargain and negotiate good prices for their produce. When they produce, one of the weaknesses they have is they have to sell quickly, or else the produce might perish. So the cold storage facility is meant to ameliorate this challenge. As you also have mentioned, URR deserves special consideration because of the climatic conditions. Everyone knows it gets hotter the more you go east in this country. So there's a particular need for cold storage facilities in URR, but also in other regions of the country.
With this storage facility, it is expected the issue of post-harvest loss for vegetable produce due to lack of market will be the thing of the past, as women in URL will now have a facility to store their vegetables to preserve them. Said Kamara, reporting for GRTS News from Basse Upper River Region.
global commitment to international relations and diplomacy is being tested with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine dividing opinions in the international arena. Countries around the world often tailor-make their foreign policies to suit their interests. However, international relations and diplomacy continues to be critical players in bringing nations together and ending conflicts that have brought untold losses to the global community. The Gambia pursues a comprehensive foreign policy anchored on the national interest and mutual respect. Well, for a brief look at Gambia's current international relations and diplomacy, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Essa Bokar C, a former Gambian diplomat to the United States of America. Good evening, Mr. C, and a warm welcome to GRTS News.
Good evening. Dear studies.
Well, you've served as a Gambian ambassador to the United States. Now, to begin with, how would you describe the Gambia's foreign policy?
Well, the Gambia's foreign policy, I would say, is part of what the world is experiencing within the geopolitical and the geostrategic arena. I think nowadays we all know that to compare to physical geography, we have the earthquake, and then we are all feeling the tremor. So this is not excluding any country, and I believe it calls for a reorientation, it calls for looking inward, and it calls for beginning with national interest before thinking about anything else.
So how has the country used this foreign policy to advance its national interest?
Well, I have high regards for the current occupant of the seat, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And then I think it is a question of synchronized efforts, because the custodian of the Constitution and then the driver of the foreign service of any country is the sitting president. And I believe it's not about single-handedly one person orienting the foreign policy of a nation. There is what we call synchronized efforts of expertise, synchronized efforts of diplomatic representatives within and outside the Republic of the Gambia. So I believe with an effective team, any country can become a champion of diplomacy.
So when we look at it, after all, is the Gambia actually realizing what is set out in the policy agenda?
Yes, it depends, because the policy agenda, whatever it is on whichever country, the beginning of it is national interest. Like they always say, diplomacy is based on reciprocity and interest. Well, you reciprocate interest, you know diplomacy. Well, it all goes with, it is guided by two, form and substance. The substance is the Hollywood acting of diplomacy, and the substance is where we discuss matters that will affect our interests internally and externally, and then be able to play and occupy the role we deserve on the geopolitical arena and the geostrategic arena.
Okay, so now looking at it all, how would you compare us to that of other countries in sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, I think ours is very active. The active part of the Gambia, let's say we can make reference to recent events, which is the Rohingya. Gambia wasn't just sitting by and say it's just a part of it. Currently also, we can see the participation of the Gambia. In fact, we are approaching another test on the international arena, but more specifically Africa, which is the African Liberation Day. There people will converge to speak. The speeches shouldn't be rhetorical, but they should be of benefits to people, and then we have to change the dynamics.
Now, a little bit more on that, because we know that the status and weight of countries in the international arena is often measured by their economic prowess and military might. What does a country like the Gambia bring in the international diplomatic arena?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. That's why we have these arenas, geostrategic arena and the geopolitical arena. You're right. Where you have economic might and where you have military might, you listen to. But that's, we can backtrack on that. It is why also the world is in a turmoil, because, the might of a country militarily shouldn't determine that it should speak. Then we are now replacing right with might. What is right and what is of might? That's another thing, which is, you're absolutely right. That is the way it is paved on this globe. There are countries like the Gambia. We can be militarily weak compared to other countries. We can be economically down compared to other countries. But we can also become moral superpowers. We can also become superpowers of tolerance. We can also become superpowers of national pride. I mean, so I think Gambia, I mean, if you look at other countries in the world, the smallest, in Africa, Rwanda is one of the smallest. They make a lot of noise and they make a lot of progress. Israel is a very small country when it compared, but today, the role they play in the world is not only about their military might, but it's about how they engage through lobbying, through intelligence gathering and all that. Gambia can be a hub. You remember historically when, strategically, Gambia is very important in this world because the British know when they used to refuel here to go and bombard the Falkland Islands. Yeah.
So with a typical indication of the role that the Gambia has played, also relate to that of the Rohingya Muslims, the role we played in that?
Yes, definitely we did play a big role in it. It was in a one-person show. Of course, in any country, you would bring out certain individuals that they did this, they did that, but everything also honestly was done under the supervision of the Office of the President. And then we played a big role where we stood up to show the world that we cannot sit by and look at other people being persecuted, like you said earlier on, military might, because that's where the wrong side of the military might is felt in any society, because military might in Myanmar is what made the Rohingya people feel aliens in their own country. And
Now, there are many conflicts going on around the world, and they include the Russia-Ukraine crisis, right? And we have seen that diplomacy could not prevent the war in Ukraine. Why does diplomacy or diplomatic negotiations fail in cases like the Ukraine war?
Absolutely. Well, I think I'm saying it with humility, not arrogance or pride, but I think I'm one Gambian son who met one of the principal actors, who is Vladimir Putin himself.
Okay.
I met him in the Kremlin. I mean, we presented letters of credentials. So these are areas I'm familiar with as a student in France and as a diplomat. I mean, I understand the conflict there is wider than what we are being told. It's ranging from the general to the specific, particularly when it comes to the source of power. Like when I say power, I mean gasoline, I mean, all the natural resources that they would control to share to other parts of the world. Because today, if Russia closes some pipes, like the Nord 1, 2 on the eastern side, on the other side, many other countries within the Western hemispheres, Europe in particular, will shiver in cold. So I think diplomacy has failed because diplomacy was in listening to intelligence gathering. These two are intertwined. I mean, if diplomacy wants to pass through the test of time, it has to test the pulse of society. Diplomacy cannot test the pulse of society without using the effective services of the invisible structure.
What would be a takeaway here for every country?
Well, the takeaway for every country is that we should encourage people-to-people relations rather than just stopping at state-to-state relations, because states come from people. And I think we must respect the views of people, like Thomas Sankara said it. He said the people in Europe and the people in Africa or America feel the same thing. The issue lies where the states fail in connecting the fuses.
Very well. Mr. C, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was Mr. Issa Bokar C. He is a former Gambian diplomat to the United States of America. Well, we'll move on because the Young Writers Association of the Gambia, in collaboration with Alliance Francaise, recently held the semi-finals of the National Storytelling Competition. Students and art groups across the country attended the event, which also witnessed a display of talents in entertainment and education. Fatudiba picks up the rest of that story.
Writers Association for the first time introduced a storytelling competition as part of their efforts to better shape the arts industry in the Gambia. 10 of the participants from the semi-finals were shortlisted for the National Storytelling Competition finals. In his opening statement at the ceremony, President of the Young Writers Association, Mamadou Sow, highlighted the importance of storytelling as an art.
Aim of the storytelling competition is to promote the culture of storytelling in the Gambia among young people. The event also marks the 200 years anniversary of Banjul. One of the challenges facing the Gambia as a country is the poor attitude to reading and writing. With the due consideration of these huge challenges, the leadership of the Young Writers Association of the Gambia, led by Mr. Keba S. Juara and the delegation, thought it would be a great idea to organize the National Storytelling Competition in order to address these challenges.
Storytelling engages the mind and helps develop imaginations. As a specialized field in the arts sector, it teaches and inspires generations.
Historian, Professor Ibrahim Sek, called Buki and Gumbo, in which Professor Sek was talking about the role of storytelling as a form of resistance during the transatlantic slave trade. And because these African slaves, these Africans who were captured like Kunta Kinte and taken to the New World, at night, they had storytelling sessions, which the slave masters did not like. But they used to hide.
The storytelling aimed to address critical developmental needs of our country and reignite love for our culture and values. Having analyzed the gist of the competition in 3 words, I would like to say that the National Storytelling Competition is intensely relevant, culturally distinct, and extraordinarily powerful towards nation building.
One after the other, participants narrated different stories, conveying culture, history, and values that unite the people.
And greed also makes a man to become a prey to death.
Storytelling is a most important element of our lives. It's the most important element of our lives. And I'll give you 3 reasons. Number 1, it is through which we vehicle our culture. When you are a child, your grandma or your father will tell you stories, and through these stories, they will give you moral lessons. They will teach you how good people will always get good at the end, and how bad people will always get bad at the end.
Fatu Diba, for GRT's News.
Well, that report by Fatu Diba takes us to our first break. News from outside the Gambia comes right after. Stay.
Hello, Sister Nya here, and today we are doing the unboxing of the Africell 4G LTE CPE router. Have you gotten yours yet? Here it is. All right, now let's do the unboxing of the Africell.
With the approach of the yearly International Day to End Obstetric Fistula on 23rd May, BAFRO wishes to remind you that obstetric fistula can be prevented and in most cases can be treated. Obstetric fistula is a hole that forms between a woman's or a girl's birth canal and bladder or rectum, caused by prolonged obstructed labor without prompt medical help. As a result, the survivors of this injury leak urine and or feces uncontrollably through the vagina. About 2 million women and girls live with this injury in developing countries, including the Gambia. As a cured fistula patient, I urge all affected women and girls to seek medical care as soon as possible so that, like me, you can also live a happy, healthy, and productive life. I also ask the government to provide us functional emergency obstetric services so that the lives of more women can be saved.
I call on all parents to discourage early marriages and pregnancies which contribute to obstetric fistula while promoting good nutrition and education.
Regain your dignity.
Wondering how to cash in using AfriMoney? Here are a few steps. Go to the nearest Afri agent. Tell them how much you want to deposit. Give the agent your number
and the cash. You will receive an SMS notification from 777 confirming the deposit. To check and confirm your balance, dial *777#. Select option 7, My Account. Select option 1, Check Balance. Enter your PIN to receive your balance. With AfriMoney, sa jahle jeexna.
The Tunisian Health Ministry says it has suspended the use of Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccines following a recent warning by the World Health Organization. The government says it took the decision to preserve the health of its citizens and ensure their safety. Adnan Chawachi reports from the capital, Tunis.
The Committee to Combat COVID-19 say health authorities are currently making inventory of the quantities of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which will be destroyed in Tunisia.
Following the WHO and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration warning, we decided to suspend the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We did not suspend its authorization. This will not affect the vaccination campaign because we have other alternatives in Tunisia, which are the Pfizer, Moderna, Sinovac, and Sputnik vaccines.
Experts say the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine poses a rare but serious risk of blood clots in people who received the jab. Hossam is a Johnson & Johnson vaccine recipient. He is concerned about the reported potential side effects as well as long-term health complications resulting from the shot.
People are terrified and they do not understand what's happening following many recent reports on health complications caused by the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I attempted to get vaccinated to preserve public health and to save lives, and also not to put my own life at risk.
Some public health officials believe that suspending the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine may fuel vaccine hesitancy in the North African country.
It's true that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine can cause rare but serious blood clotting, but it's only 3 cases for 1 million people. Of these 3 cases, only 1 individual out of 2 million can die of this side effect. This is extremely limited if we compare it to the coronavirus death rate. The government's mismanagement of the situation will lead to more vaccine hesitancy.
More than 6.5 million Tunisians have received their full vaccine doses, and more than 1.3 million have received a third dose. Over 36,000 individuals even got a 4th booster shot. Tunisia has recorded more than 28,575 COVID-related deaths since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country in March 2020.
Some experts argue that health authorities in Tunisia could be overreacting to concerns raised about the safety of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but the health ministry says it's protecting public health. The health situation in the country is stable, but the scientific committee is closely monitoring that, following the recent wave of COVID infections reported in different parts of the world. Adnan Chawachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, the price of food and non-alcoholic beverages in South Africa rose by 6% in April compared to a year earlier, according to new figures released by the country's National Statistics Agency on Wednesday. Chairperson Derek Matthews said in an interview with China Media Group that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has already had a major impact on food and fertilizer prices. Let's take a listen.
Immediate solution would be to get liquidity. The continent needs liquidity to be able to cope up with the increasing prices of foodstuff, especially things that were being imported from Ukraine. So they are saying that the International Monetary Fund should release more facilities so that they can be able to get more special drawing rights. We know in 2021, SDR that was given by the IMF to combat the COVID-19 pandemic was equivalent to about $650 billion, and Africa got only 5.8% of this, which was not enough. So now with this conflict that has come from Ukraine, Africa is saying that the IMF should look again because it's an emergency, so they should be able to provide more resources because it's an emergency. Also, secondly, the continent is not even talking about doing taxes right now. It's talking about finding supply of goods in shortage. For example, they are talking about having countries that are producing surplus to be able to sell to other countries within the continent. They have designed what they call the African Trade Exchange, which is a platform, a digital platform where countries will be able to advertise themselves and say what they are selling that has been in shortage so that other countries can buy from them. And also as a pool, that is as Africa, they can be able to pull together and buy these same grains and fertilizers from other countries, you know. So that's what they are looking at right now. The issue of taxes has not been talked about right now as a short-term measure. It is probably something that they will look into in the future in terms of domestic resource mobilization. Well, the issue has been addressed as the need for Africa to redefine its relationship with multinational agencies, and this includes the International Monetary Fund and other lending institutions. Could be as a group, could be the G20, G7, and also the IMF. So they are saying that it is time for some of the rules and regulations that are put for Africa to access funds to be redefined, because the UN Economic Commission for Africa says some of these rules that are working right now were formed in the 1940s, you know, and they don't apply now because the continent is getting crisis, for example, the Ukraine crisis that it's not even part of. So they are saying that it's time for the continent to, and for these institutions to agree to redefine these measures, because Africa has become a very important unit in the globe, because it has developing countries, and it is quite, an important unit that cannot be ignored and cannot be treated like it was in the 1940s and all that. So that is how they have approached it. I mean, the president of the African Union, who is the president of Senegal, Macky Sall, has said that he will be talking to some of these, he'll be attending the G7 summit, as well as talking to some of these countries to ensure that they push for this, because at the moment, if that is not addressed, then it becomes very unfair for Africa to fight or to even recover economically in such shocks, because nobody knows which other shock will come. And we remember that COVID-19 pandemic is not even over. So the countries are pushing for these countries and all these international relations to be reviewed so that Africa can get a fair share. And there's also been talk about the fact that Africa should also think about joining the G20, because it's a continent that is worth, reckoning. So they are pushing for that. It's a matter that it's, we're yet to see how it will work out, but they're hoping that if Africa speaks with one voice, then the G20 and all the other international financial institutions should be able to listen to what the continent is talking about.
But a quick look at our main stories once again. The Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Kinte Sanyang, presides over the official launch of the 2022 State of the World Population Report on behalf of the Vice President. Local Government, Lands and Religious Affairs Minister Sheriff Abba Sanyang embarks on a nationwide familiarization tour. Officials of the multi-million-dollar Giraffe project says the initiative will transform the agriculture value chain into a more productive sector.
A devastating fire outbreak has ravaged an entire shop in Tipakunda, leaving the owners in a desperate situation. Away from home, the Tunisian Health Ministry say it has suspended the use of Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccines following a recent warning by the World Health Organization. Elsewhere, the price of food and non-alcoholic beverages in South Africa rose by 6% in April compared to a year earlier.
Well, that was all we had time for in this edition of GRTS News. Newsfile, rather. Do join Fatou Alika Mulisha at 10 p.m. for more news and updates. Until then, do stay safe. See you then. It was a pleasure.